Morning, Bones.
Morning, Padre. How you doing?
Yeah, I'm hanging in there today, man. Been looking over all the
Good.
conflicts, some more going on with this Epstein thing, man. Uh, and I was trying to look into the Russiagate issue and the grand jury subpoenas that are being alleged by Tulsi Gabbard that are coming out. But what I found is there's a slew of people that have been subpoenaed to testify before the grand jury. However, it's all on the Epstein case.
I found that issue myself trying to investigate the Russian collusion and the charges of treason that were supposedly being brought up against Obama, but everything shifted to the Epstein trial, the Epstein case.
Yeah, it's all back on that, and in trying to find information on it, other than who was being called to testify, uh, which would be Bill Clinton, Hillary Clinton, and a slew of former FBI directors and CIA directors. Um, I think there were nine other people who have been subpoenaed to testify, and I kept wondering why are we holding the grand jury on this again? And I just ran across, right as we were getting ready to start today, a report that talks about it came out an hour ago, ruling from a judge. Trump had asked, in lieu of all this controversy going on and all the questioning of the transparency, he had directed Pam Bondi to have those grand jury notes on the Epstein or Maxwell case unsealed. Just about an hour and a half ago, Judge Paul Engelmeyer, in a written decision to the government, said that they had proposed releasing grand jury materials casually or promiscuously, jeopardizing the tradition of grand jury secrecy that protects the confidence of those called to testify before future grand juries. He denied the motion, and in short, basically what he's saying is that the suggestion that grand jury materials would bring light or any kind of new or meaningful information is demonstrably false. He said there's nothing in the grand jury indictment on Maxwell's case that would give any new information and people would come away feeling disappointed and misled. He said there was no person identified other than Epstein and Maxwell as having had sexual contact with a minor. They don't discuss any clients. They don't reveal any information about the crimes. They won't reveal anything about Epstein's death or the circumstances of it. So basically, he denied the motion, stating that there would be no new information and that document is only 200 pages long. And compared to the thousands of pages that are in possession of the DOJ now, there would be no new information. So he declined to release the grand jury documents. Now, some of the victims have supported releasing them with some redactions. Other accusers said the debate over the material caused them a lot of anguish. And as we mentioned before, Ghislaine Maxwell, who's now appealing her conviction, opposed unsealing the documents. Her attorney apparently hasn't seen them, which I would question, but believe they're full of questionable statements. The other thing about these statements, apparently there was only Maxwell and two federal government agents, FBI agents, that testified to that grand jury, which I think is why now they're trying to pull back the curtain and call in these other witnesses into the grand jury to testify. They have thousands of pages of documents, but none of it's verified through any kind of court testimony. So there you have it, man. The judge has denied releasing those and telling them do your own investigation. So that's what's now being done. Uh,
I,
this
I'm like at awe with the judge's statement on coming away disappointed and feeling misled. So since the beginning of this, back when it started, I've been disappointed and felt misled the whole time.
exactly, exactly,
I just wanted to throw that in
and
there.
apparently the grand jury on Maxwell that led to her conviction really contains no information. Um, how was she then convicted if there's not enough information in there to convict? And does it confirm information that we're now being told, or does it
Yeah,
counter information that we're now being told? I don't get it.
I don't know. You know, it's like as far as she goes, just lean Maxwell. I think sometimes they need a poster child for these situations. I keep using the term poster child. Um, Epstein being gone, who's next? You know,
Well, and that's it.
just lean.
And everybody thought, hey, Maxwell's convicted. She's in prison. However, as we well know, uh, after interviewing her at a prison camp in Texas, and they believe she testified honestly, and now she's filing an appeal. There's still questions about Epstein's death, that they want some kind of things unsealed. He had pled guilty to Florida prosecution and let him avoid federal charges back in 2008. Then in 2019, he was charged again, put in jail, and they've now said nothing else will be released on any of that. But they're saying that the long rumored Epstein client list doesn't exist. But I don't know. That's why they're turning around and trying to unseal the grand jury transcripts. The problem with it is the judge has now refused to release those, claiming no new information, and we'd be disappointed in what's in there. So I guess we're going to have to wait for testimony from Bill Clinton, Hillary Clinton, and others to find
So
out if there's any new information.
yeah, do you think that those people, if they do interview them, do you think it's going to come out factual, or do you think that we'll be disappointed and misled with those investigations also?
I'm going to have to go with your second option there. I think the whole thing is going to be drug out. Quite honestly, I kind of looked into what grand jury subpoenas were about, and basically they're saying a grand jury subpoena. Of course, you have to honor it. You've got to show up and testify. You're being compelled to testify. However, you do have the right to have a counselor there, an attorney, and you do have the right to invoke the Fifth Amendment on any question on an individual basis. That being the case, any information that could self-incriminate, you could do. But now if you put Hillary on the stand and ask her about Bill, she can't invoke the Fifth Amendment. If you put Bill on there and ask her about Hillary, he can't invoke the Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination. Now there is a protection, a marital protection. I'm not sure, they didn't specifically state if that right pertained in grand jury hearings. But you've also got DOJ directors, you've got FBI directors from multiple different presidential staffs that are being called to testify. If they have information on Bill or Hillary or any other person, of course, they would be compelled to give that information. as long as it didn't incriminate them. My question then becomes, if I testify against knowing something about you, does that not incriminate me as a co-conspirator?
That's like a yeah, that's like a different can of worms right there. I you know
Well, there's the
I don't
catch
know.
22.
Yeah, yeah, I don't know what the outcome of that would be. I guess it would or could go either way. You know.
Well, unless they're going to be granted immunity for knowledge, which would defeat the entire purpose of a grand jury subpoena and being compelled to testify. If everything I testify to, I can be burned as a co-conspirator for having knowledge of it, and I invoke the
Exactly.
Fifth Amendment. So there would have to be
Exactly.
some kind of protections put in place saying, look, if you have knowledge, you have to give us the information.
So
Uh,
you'd have to have it be granted immunity from prosecution if you were going to testify. You know.
right. As a co-conspirator, anyway.
Yeah, and then in my mind, that puts things in question in my mind. You know, why do we have to do this to get the person to testify? You know,
Right.
what else is there?
And my question in this whole thing, Bones, what is it we're actually after by dragging this Epstein case up again? This just hit me. Epstein's already been convicted. He's already been suicided. Maxwell is appealing her case. Okay, let's go forward with that case. Why are we dredging the rest of this up? It seems the only thing people want to do is sling mud one way or the
Yeah,
other, party wise.
I blame it on in my mind, I can blame it on the media and the people, the folks that are in control of the media, putting out what they think the people might want to hear as far as the dramatic side of things go on the Epstein case.
Right. They're keeping it at the
So
forefront when the reality is, okay, are there people out there who were clients that are guilty of sex crimes with children? Absolutely. Should we get to the bottom of that? Absolutely. Should this be the focus of the public and the media right now? You know what?
no,
Let's do the investigation and get it over with. We're dragging names through the mud with nothing but just assumptions about who may or may
exactly.
not have been on this alleged client list that
Yeah,
now allegedly doesn't exist.
yeah, I think I would like to see the door closed on it, but I don't know that that's going to happen because it's kind of like these are the days of our lives soap opera for some people out there. Some folks just thrive on the drama involved in this kind of stuff. That's a pushing forward for the news entertainment program.
Well, and the other aspect of this, Bones, is you've got the publicly seriously divided, the left and the right, with the left saying, oh, Trump was involved in this, he's a pedophile, and the other side saying Trump wasn't involved and Clintons were involved, and there's evidence of that, and so, we want to sling it
And
all
they're
back the other way. Uh,
and then
the
the Clintons are pedophiles.
Yeah, so the reality
You
of
know,
this thing is it's an ongoing investigation and it's been dead in the water for so long. How much factual information is actually going to come out? Ghislaine Maxwell is probably the only person, other than the victims in this case, that could identify perpetrators. And if those victims could identify high profile perpetrators, why wasn't that done during the initial investigation?
yeah, you can even take it back further. In my mind, it's like take a look at Bill Clinton in his office with his personal aide that was barely 21.
Right.
So he has more indicators that he's involved in pedophilia than Trump does, as far as that goes.
Right. But
He had,
yeah,
go ahead.
no, I agree with you, Bones. As far as if we're going to look at it for what actual evidence and what actual history show, but again, does that mean that he committed those crimes on Epstein Island? It
No, it don't.
certainly,
It does.
circumstantially, it certainly says so. Uh, you know,
It doesn't mean that he did it. I agree with that. It doesn't mean that all happened. But where would the investigation go? It's like if you got a guy that was released from prison and committed several robberies a certain manner, and then after he's released, robberies start popping up again. Who would you look at?
well, absolutely, yeah. That's what I'm saying. Is where there's smoke, there's probably fire. But the investigation needs to be there. And my question, I'll go right back to it. You don't think that one of these victims, if they were victimized by Bill Clinton, could not have identified him and testified against him? You've got these hundreds of victims. You mean to tell me that none of them could identify anybody that victimized them except for Maxwell and Epstein? We don't need an Epstein list. We need the victims to be compelled to identify their perpetrators. There would be some
I
honest,
agree.
there would be some honest things. Why are they not being called to testify before the
Right.
grand jury?
But if you close the book on it too soon, then the media can't make any money off of it.
Well, that's it. And it comes right back to the media keeping this in the forefront. You've got a country divided, arguing with each other, slinging mud at each other's parties of belief. And what are we distracting from? Because as you and I know, anytime something is on this forefront of the news, look over here. Look over here, because we don't want you to see what's going on over here.
That's like the other trial of investigation on the Russian stuff, with Trump and Hillary involved. Everything that we looked at has been stifled. And like we said, when we tried to look up the stuff to find out what was going on there, we found Epstein on top of it.
Right.
So
And yet here is Tulsi Gabbard saying, I'm going after Obama and Clinton for treason.
right, treason is a high
be
crime.
this would be a major news story.
Yeah, if it was in another country and you committed treason, that's punishable by death.
Well, according to U.S. statute, it still is in the U.S. But
I didn't read the statute on it, but
but my question is, why can we now find no information on this? Well, I think you've hit it. The media controls what we're focused on. Who runs the media, Bones?
well, it's mostly run by the far left.
Exactly, and connections thereof. So,
If you don't believe me, you can look it up. Who owns the networks? You look
right.
up who owns each network.
So you've got the Russia collusion case going on that would identify, imprison key figures on the left: Obama's, Clinton's, Mueller's, Comey's. former CIA directors. You've got a slew of them that would be involved in that, charged
Judges,
with, yeah,
lawyers. I mean,
charged with treason, and yet
yeah,
all the media wants us focused on is who was tied in with Epstein.
Jeffrey,
Who was tied in with
Jeffrey,
Epstein and Maxwell? Oh, she's going to appeal her case. This is going to be front page news. I would like to know front page news on what's going on with the Russian collusion. To me, that's far more important. It has to do with disrupting the operations and trying to usurp a presidency that affects the whole country. This Epstein thing
yeah,
is a matter of if the facts were all to come out, if the facts were all to come out, Bones, and a few key figures wound up being charged with pedophilia, soliciting minors for sex, whatever those charges may be, wind up with a little bit of jail time. The ultimate outcome, if the truth were all to come out, would be half of America telling the other half of America, I told you so, I told you so. That's the bottom line. That's the only effect.
right. But it's more division in the country. It creates a lot of division inside the country.
Where
I think they like it like that. They like a country divided. They don't want a country united. Um, I prefer to have a united front and united country.
I would too, and that's, as we've said time and time again, let's pick up the facts and let the facts lead us to a conclusion, not choose a side and select the facts that back up our argument. So many questions in this case, so many things that are so much more important that we could be looking at, that we as a nation should be focused on. And yet we're hung up on Jeffrey Epstein. Now, am I trying to downplay the seriousness of what took place there? No, I'm not. Pedophilia and these things that took place, yes, they're very serious crimes, and I don't want to downplay that. There are victims out there. But there are other issues that more gravely affect this nation than the Epstein case.
Yeah, it's like, why can't we stay in today? Why can't we focus on the issues that we have that are current? Whatever happened to broadcasting current events on the national news? Whatever, these are questions that I have.
Mm-hmm.
If you haven't resolved the past, that's something you can work on in the background. It shouldn't be in the forefront.
Exactly. Let this grand jury go forward. Let the investigation go forward. It doesn't need to be headlining the news.
No, not right now.
When you come to a conclusion, let me know.
We have much greater things that we could move forward with in a positive manner rather than dwell in the past.
Agreed, Bones. We've said it before, and I'll say it again, man. We're beating this Epstein thing to death, and quite honestly, we're having to beat it to death because that's what's being thrown out in front of us, and understanding what it is that's going on and why it's going on is becoming more and more unclear.
Exactly. I think people should, it's like, I remember there was a movie, I forget the name of it, where the guy was screaming out the window that he's mad as hell and he's not going to take this anymore. I think I'm at that point as far as the news goes, as
Mm-hmm.
far as what they're putting out on the national news and stuff, and even in social media on on your main pages. So yeah, I think moving forward with current events would be a good thing if we could help make that happen.
Okay,
But
well,
it takes
what I would say, Bones, is for our part, I'd like to stop beating this Epstein thing to death until there's an actual outcome. I wish we could dig up more information that wasn't being covered up by this Epstein information.
yeah,
I'd
yeah.
like to
I'm
dig
gonna
into
keep
more current things.
Yeah, I'm going to keep digging for information on what we should be looking at. I'm going to continue to dig on my side. I won't give up there, but it's hard if you can't find any factual information to present, you know?
Exactly.
So,
Well, there you have it, folks. Epstein again, topping the news over the top of a Russian collusion, over the top of the new evidence coming out on J6, new video showing realities, topping the news of Texas Democrats fleeing the state to avoid a vote on redistricting, topping the news about Governor Newsom saying that he'll redistrict California to balance that out. You've got all these political issues that directly affect us on the forefront,
today.
and we're buried under something that occurred 10, 20 years ago. I'm going to keep searching for the truth in the current issues, and I know that's where you're coming from, Bones. We'll try to come back with more current things on the next video. So from
I'm
Padre Havoc
excited.
and Bones,
Yeah, yeah, I'm excited. If I had a tail, I'd wag it. But stay positive, everybody.